Good afternoon, and thank you for tuning in to this special episode of Labor Shift, the best 60 minutes on the clock. I'm the Reverend Terry Melvin, the president of the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists, and your host for Labor Shift. This week was supposed to be the Democratic Convention, but due to the global pandemic that our government has refused to do anything about, the convention was rescheduled to August. But we believe at CBTU that we should not waste this opportunity to discuss pressing issues we want to see the Democratic Party take up, and also create the opportunity for our members to hear directly from Vice President and soon to be President Joe Biden. Tonight, Joe will be joining us later to speak directly to CBTU and our members. Tonight, we have titled the episode Biden and Black Labor, because we need to be honest with ourselves as a people and as a community and as a movement. Joe Biden is the best candidate, the top candidate, the only candidate for who cares about the Black community and Black workers, the only candidate who listens to the Black community and Black workers, and who is the only candidate actively working with the Black community and Black workers. I need to be clear with all of you. CBTU did not endorse Joe because he is not Trump. We did not pick the lesser of two evils. We did not endorse for the sake of endorsing. In our 49-year history, we've only endorsed 3 candidates. The first time was to form the CBTU under the leadership of Bill Lucey, Jack Edwards, Cleve Robinson, Charlie Hayes, and Bill Simons. Black labor took a hard stance against Richard Nixon, one that history has proven to be the correct stance. They refused to stay quiet in the election and endorse George McGovern against Nixon. They knew Nixon was not a friend of the Black community, was not a friend of labor, and was definitely not a stable president for this nation. Like I said before, history proved them correct. In 2008, we endorsed Barack Obama. Now, I know many of you thought we did it because he was Black. I mean, of course, the coalition of Black trade unionists was going to endorse the Black guy. The truth is, if this was the only reason we endorsed him, there were plenty of other Black candidates we could have endorsed in the past. If being Black was the only benchmark, we should have endorsed Herman Cain or Ben Carson. An endorsement from CBTU isn't just about being Black. In 2008, we were in a financial crisis. It even got a name, the Great Recession. We were in an endless war in the Middle East. We were at Cold War with Iran. This nation desperately needed a new leader and a new direction. We knew we had to endorse. We knew it had to be Obama. So we endorsed him to the betterment of this country and the world. But in less than 4 years later, less than 4 years out of office, less than 4 years without Barack and his team, less than 4 years of Republican control in this country, it has turned into a third world nation with a Gucci bag. This country is riddled with more tumors than a cancer patient. We have a global pandemic that has hurt countries but is destroying America. Black deaths are highest while our infection rate are similar to other demographics. The White House wants to open schools but won't let tours begin. Those in the White House get tested daily for corona but publicly admit to slowing down testing to depress results. They know how to protect themselves, but won't protect us. Trillions of dollars were sent to corporations so billionaires could stay billionaires, but workers got a $1,200 check. White nationalism has become a public hazard, health hazard. These people driving cars through us like we're bowling pins. They're literally lynching us and calling it suicide. My point is, the country is sick. We don't need a scalpel, we need a hatchet. We got gangrene in our hands. This country can't keep itself from choking out Black men or shooting unarmed women in their own home. This nation's feet are rancid from walking over the bodies of the poor to take our money. We need change. We need new leaders. We need Joe Biden in 2020. And that's why CBTU has endorsed Joe Biden. Vice President Biden is a proven leader who was able to work under a Black man, and now as a candidate is working with Black people to build a campaign that reflects our issues and gives our people a voice. We picked Joe in 2019 when we polled our convention delegates, and he got over 50% of the vote when there were over 20 candidates at that time. It was the Black community that pushed him over the edge during the primary, and it will be the Black community that secures his presidency in November. I want to give some context on why CBTU made the decision to endorse that it did. But I want to open it up to other voices to give us their reasons. Why in the Black community, we are a diverse and we're different. We come in all shades and colors. We're essential workers in all industries with different religions and creeds. So there isn't just one reason why we're voting for Joe. The Black vote is not monolithic, but it is consistent. And with that said, I want to turn now to Dr. Loretta Johnson, the fearless Secretary Treasurer of AFT. She has always been a voice for Black people and especially Black children. Now I have to warn the audience right now that viewer discretion is advised. See, Loretta don't hold her tongue. We're talking about an election where one candidate wants to open up the school and kill her babies. So she may say things that we may need to bleep out later on. Dr. Johnson, I want to thank you for being here with us, and let's hear from you at this time. You have to unmute, Dr. Johnson.
Okay, I was muted. I'm sorry. I'm going to behave myself, Mr. President, tonight, because I'm very serious about this candidate. I'm glad to be with you this evening to talk about not just why I'm voting for Joe Biden for President of the United States, but why I hope you will vote for Joe Biden on November the 3rd. It feels like the year 2020 is one of the records books, you know, and it's not over. I didn't believe I'd see a year like this year. In the first few months, we were hit with a health pandemic that turned the world upside down and changed how we live and how we work. That put our economy in a crisis where millions of our people have lost their jobs and are struggling to feed their children and their families and pay their bills. And we witnessed the lynching of a Black man on the streets of Minneapolis. I didn't expect to see that. I sat and watched that. I couldn't believe my eyes and what I saw. The murder of George Floyd by the police initiated a massive protest that are forcing this country to reckon around racism. This is a critical moment for us, one that demands real leadership. We cannot lose the momentum that our young people just showed 13, 14 days of massive protests and making demands. Joe Biden is a real leader who can unite our divided nation and to begin the work of healing our deep wounds. Joe Biden recognizes the need to confront and condemn racism, while Donald Trump uses it to fuel hatred and further divide us. Joe Biden is accomplished his own misjudgment around race and talked about it. He acknowledged it. Trump continues to attack Black leaders, put immigrant children in cages, embrace white supremacists as fine people. Can you imagine a president standing up saying white supremacists, very fine people? I was just starting my union career as an organizer in Baltimore when the protests erupted in 1968 after Dr. King was killed. I never dreamed that 52 years later, we would have a president who is trying to roll back every bit of the progress and marching for and fought for during the 60s. This past February, I was so proud. I was in South Carolina for the Democratic debate and the primaries. And I watched our African-American voters overwhelmingly chose Joe Biden. I realized that often our expectation of the Democratic Party has been high, but gone unfulfilled. But I believe, not this time, this candidate, Joe Biden, understands that our issues can't be put on the back burner. I've known Joe Biden for a long time, and I've known him be a good man who has spent his entire fighting career for people like us. He's a man of value. Black Lives Matter. I believe he is a champion for working people, for unions, and for our schools and our communities. And that's why I'm with Joe. And I believe he's gonna help us. We can't open our schools without the right tools. And you can't expect teachers and support personnel to take those tools out of their pockets. We can't produce what is needed now in this COVID-19. We're ready to educate, and we're ready to be on the front line, and we're ready to march with Joe Biden to make a difference for our democracy, for what is happening in America, and for our health, economy. I support Joe Biden. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Johnson. We appreciate you being here with us tonight, bringing your wisdom to the table, some sanity to the table. Now next with us, we have Francis Nichols. This young man is dynamic and energetic, and also does not mince his words. He spits truth whenever he opens his mouth. And for my under 40 people watching, we want you to listen to your peer. Francis, we want you to speak to those under 40 folks for us.
Good evening, and thank you for having me. My name is Francis Nichols III, and I'm the current Vice President of Local 1456 of the American Federation of Government Employees. I'm the 14th District Young Coordinator, the AFGE's National Pride Coordinator. I hold an executive board seat of Pride at Work. I'm the Vice President of the National Capital Area Council, also known as Council One, here in Washington, D.C. And I'm also a proud member of the Washington, D.C. CBTU chapter. As you can see, I wear a lot of hats in the labor movement, and I never want to sell myself short. AFG believes in me, and I believe in them. I'm voting for Joe Biden because his priorities are our priorities. And I believe that he will fulfill his promises to uplift the marginalized communities of working people. All this violence has to stop. We don't say it enough, Black Lives Matter. But we also rarely even say Black trans lives matter too. This is a population that seems to be always forgotten. One of my mentors and former president of AFG Local 1456, President Tyler always said to me, dignity and respect will carry you far in the labor movement. And after reading Joe Biden's plan to advocate for the LGBTQ plus community on equality in America, the vision of achieving greater equality for LGBTQ people, his plan, Joe Biden's plan, I tell you, lays out a vision that not only reverses the damage that 45 has done, but pushes this country towards new regulations and laws to help level the playing field for the LGBTQ community, treating the LGBT community with dignity and respect. The Biden plan for strengthening worker organizing and collective bargaining unit and unions goes a long way towards righting the wrongs of the past. From checking the abuse of corporation power and making it easier for us to form and join unions. Joe Biden's plan will empower the working people and help ensure every worker can sustain a family, have access to health care, and retire with dignity and respect. These are some of the reasons why I, Francis Nichols III, am voted for Joe Biden as the 46th president of the United States of America. Once again, we are in a crisis, and I believe that Joe Biden is the man that will lead us on the right path of just glory and making sure that we all come out on top, and securing the future of all of us, of Black people, people of color. He will secure that future because, like President Melvin just said, I'm under 40. I still got a long way to live. I want to make sure that I and my son has a future to go on in this great nation. Thank you, President Melvin, for definitely having me on here today. I really appreciate it. And I turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much, Francis. You are truly one of our rising stars in the movement, and you speak truth to power. We're so happy to have you here with us today. So now we're going to jump over to Chi-Town. We have Mamie Pratt with us tonight out of UFCW. She represents essential workers. You know, we weren't called essential workers, those people she represents, before this pandemic came up. But now she's representing essential workers, which makes her an essential worker. Mamie, thank you for joining us, and share with us now, if you will.
Good evening. Thank you for having me. It's an honor and a pleasure. Again, I'm Mamie Pratt. I am a business agent for UFCW Local 881, and we represent retail workers, which are essential workers. I am Vice President of Executive Board, and I am also proudly serve as the Executive Vice President of the Chicago chapter CBTU. So with me, I would like to start with the labor aspect because it's personal for me. Coming from a union family, being part of the labor movement, as well as working for a local union and a organization, a labor organization. It is so vitally important in my mind that working people know that they have a voice in the workplace. They need to know that they have the right to wages, fair wages, living wage. They also need to know that they should have adequate health care. Americans, union and non-union, need to know that they have a voice in the workplace and that their jobs are secure and protected. Joe Biden believes and has supported unions throughout his distinguished career. So that demonstrates to me what side Joe is on. I think he will continue to listen, be an agent of change for working and middle-class people. We need to step back and we need to reevaluate how school funding is being designated. We say time and time again that all children have the right to a fair education, But we all know that that is not the case. We need to do what we can to help these children. We need to reach out to our labor leaders, our politicians, our clergy. We need to stay on the phone with legislators, hold them accountable, as well as holding ourselves accountable. Because if we're going to talk the talk, we most definitely need to walk the walk. We have found an ally in Joe Biden. During his congressional career, he led the fight for a gun-free school zone. He voted in favor of Leave No Child Behind and other acts, but he has acknowledged that there must be a new direction in revamping our educational policy, and has made it a major plank in his 2020 campaign. Joe proposes reduction in class sizes, tripling funding to low-income schools, which will provide for more support staff, such as counselors, psychologists, nurses, funding for universal kindergarten, and fully funding the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. If there is one thing that the coronavirus has taught us, is that everyone needs the right to healthcare. I am truly grateful for all of those who have survived the virus with weeks and even months of staying in the hospital. But I often wonder who will be left to pay the hundreds of thousands of hospital bills that these individuals are going to be receiving. Systematic racism, it must be addressed. It must be disbanded. We know that things will never be the same, but over the last few months, people have come together to show support during the untimely death of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and there are countless others. But we need to do what we can to help make sure that this does not continue to happen to our people. It was indeed heartwarming to see hundreds and thousands of Black, white, Asian, brown, young, old, Catholics, Baptists, Jewish, Muslims, and other religions hitting the streets saying Black Lives Matter. The course of America is on a path that needs to be reversed. Now, do I think Joe can do this all by himself? Absolutely not. But I do believe we will have an ally in the White House. We will have a friend and an agent for change. So I feel Joe Biden will listen to what we are saying. He will deliver on what we're asking. And that is why I am voting for him. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mamie. That's my home girl, Mamie. You working with these folks that are truly essential workers that are out there every day. We now want to turn to south to Georgia, where we're joined by Glenn Kelly. Glenn is a bricklayer and a father, and still a young man, young enough to be one of my children. So Glenn, it's good to have you on our broadcast today, and just ask you to share with us your views on the Biden campaign, and where are you?
Thank you, President Melvin. Hi, everyone. I am Glenn Kelly, and I joined the Bricklayers and Allied Craft Workers Union back in 2009 at the age of 19. So like Brother Francis, I'm a young worker as well. At the age of 30, I'm the first African-American president of BAC Local 8 Southeast, which means that I am also a young worker from the South that's trying to make real change. I support Vice President Biden because he will protect Davis-Bacon and other prevailing wage laws as he has throughout his career. These laws ensure that people are paid fairly and protect local wage standards. Project labor agreements is another way to promote local hire and a gateway to our apprenticeship programs. One way to strengthen collective bargaining is to pass bills such as the PRO Act. The PRO Act can make it easier to organize and protect the rights of workers. Studies show that African-American women are most receptive to unions. We definitely keep that in the back of our mind as we organize. When Vice President Biden is elected, he will support major investments in infrastructure, such as schools and airports, which means good paying jobs. He will also push for criminal justice reform, which affects African Americans in more ways than any other group. We also should not only look at nonviolent offenses, but look at how many people who are wrongly convicted in our prison system as well. In closing, I feel as though Vice President Biden will be a great candidate for president. I appreciate the Vice President Biden's commitment, that he's committed to having a diverse administration that looks more representative of the African-American community and all communities of color in this country. Because having a seat at the table helps us be able to push for real effective change. We always have to remember Black lives matter, Black workers matter, and Black leaders matter, and especially young people in this country. President Melvin, I appreciate it. And this is from the South. We appreciate being able to be here tonight. And I'm looking forward to hearing from Vice President Biden. We're going to turn Georgia blue, okay? Down here.
All right. All right, Glenn. You heard it here first on the CBTU broadcast. Glenn is going to make sure that Georgia turns blue, and we're going to need that Senate seat. So whatever you need to do, we're behind you 100%, Glenn.
Yes,
as a Black man in the trades, you set a much needed example for both our community and the trades themselves. Keep up the good work, the work that you have been doing and the work that you are doing. So now we have a young sister out of the AFL-CIO, just joined recently, Victoria Thompson. She speaks with a strong voice, but know that she will, that while she lives in DC, this is a Bama girl through and through. Thank you, Victoria, for being here with us. And why don't you share with us your views on the campaign?
Thank you so much, President Melvin. I greatly appreciate it. Howard Thurman once said, there are two questions that we have to ask ourselves. The first is, where am I going? And the second is, who will go with me? A leading theologian and mentor to civil rights leaders such as Dr. King, and credited as one of the key influencers who shaped a generation of nonviolent radical activism, Thurman posed these simple questions during a much different time in this country. However, as we continue to watch the layers of progress built on these ideas be eroded by a resurgence of bigotry, division, and outright hateful political leadership, at times it's felt like we've been trapped in the twilight zone or a time machine going backwards. In these times, I'm sure many of you too have asked yourselves these questions. Where are we going, and who will go with me? Good afternoon. My name is Victoria Thompson. I serve as a coordinator in the Human, Civil, and Women's Rights Department at the AFL-CIO. I want to thank and acknowledge all of our international officers and leaders on this call for your remarks and for welcoming me as a new fighter in the labor movement to join this critical conversation. I would also like to acknowledge my leaders, President Richard Trumka, Vice President Tafari Jabre, and Secretary Treasurer Liz Shuler, whose vision for working Americans I am honored to support daily. As a young Black woman, born and raised in Birmingham, Alabama, the great-grandchild of a couple who was told that their love was not legal, granddaughter of a union painter, and daughter to a veteran and union painter, I grew up with the reverence for the history and commitment to continuing the fight of my people who have long suffered and sacrificed for generations in the pursuit for equal rights, justice, and opportunity. This drew me from the belly of the civil rights movement to the heart of American democracy over 8 years ago to attend the illustrious Howard University. However, I never would have imagined that the same White House I marched to in 2012 with thousands of students to celebrate a win that was built on centuries of ancestor struggles and progress would become the layer for a man whose sole agenda is to return our country to our darkest days and beyond. Within 100 days of January 21, 2017, more than 100 policies were introduced to dismantle over a century of progress for women. And I asked myself, where are we going? Not too long after day 365, we were met with horrific images of government-sanctioned concentration camps filled with children in cages who were torn away from their parents for simply seeking a better life. And again, I asked myself, where are we going? Within weeks of viewing these images, working Americans and the labor movement were struck with a devastating blow against their right to organize and bargain for better wages, a value long taught to me as a child of labor. And I asked myself yet again, where are we going? To be honest, we've had too many of these moments to count, And the truth is, we all know the answer. The man who now resides at Black Lives Matter Plaza Northwest wants to return this country back to a time where few lives mattered at all. But today, I am proud to be in a conversation with who will go with me, with women, with Black and brown folk, with immigrants and young people. Who will go with us to a $15 minimum wage, a smarter system for funding higher education, a compassionate healthcare system that protects all of us, and the values that I am honored to continue fighting for in the labor movement that have been passed down and paved by leaders like Dr. Loretta Johnson. There is only one candidate on the ballot this year who has answered the question, who will go with me, with us, with our movement? And I know that Vice President Joe Biden has boldly replied, send me, I'll go. So as a young 26-year-old graduate student of Howard University School of Divinity, labor organizer, womanist, activist, and future theologian and community servant, I am ready to cast a ballot that will save us all. For my faith and values, for my family and history, for Breonna Taylor, for George Floyd, for Trayvon Martin, for Raya Milton, and those in the streets saying every name, and for a leader whose battle tested for the fight ahead, along with some much needed student loan forgiveness. I am proud to go with Biden. Thank you, President Melvin.
Thank you, Victoria. Did y'all hear that Southern twang in her speech? You can take the Bama out, take the girl out of Bama, but you can't take the Birmingham out of her. Next up, we have my brother and my friend, someone I've been working with for quite a few years now, Claude Cummings, all the way out of Texas. Claude is a political machine. You don't run for office in Texas without talking to Claude. It may take you 5 days to drive across Texas, but all political roads lead to him in the state. Brother Claude, would you please share your thoughts on this election with us?
Thank you so much, President Melvin, and good evening to all of you. As President Melvin has said, my name is Claude Cummings, Jr. I'm the Vice President of Communication Workers of America District 6. I'm also a trustee on the board of CBTU. I'm the first Vice President of the Harris County CBTU chapter. I'm also the first Vice President of the Houston chapter of the NAACP, and I'm a board member with the A. Philip Randolph Institute. On behalf of the Communication Workers of America and my president, Chris Shelton, thank you so much for giving me an opportunity to talk briefly about why I am supporting Joe Biden for president. I'm so proud to support Joe Biden for president, and I'm glad to have the opportunity to share with you why electing him as president of the United States is so very important. First and foremost, Joe Biden is a decent, honest man. It should go without saying that our president should be decent and honest. But as we have learned over the past 3.5 years, it's not something to be taken for granted. But Joe Biden's character isn't just acceptable, it's exemplary. You know where you stand with him, which is not something you can say about all politicians. And he listens, also something that is not always the case with politicians. In fact, it's more appropriate to call Joe a public servant than a politician. It is clear that he has always put serving the people of this country first, and that is especially true for working people. Joe Biden will walk the walk when it comes to fighting for workers' rights to organize and bargain collectively. In other words, his mouth and his feet will move in the same direction when it comes to working people. He understands when we ask, which side are you on? And he is the first to say he is on the side of the workers, not the bosses. He knows who built America and who built the middle class. Joe Biden supports strengthening the right to organize and collectively bargain. He also endorsed pro-worker labor law reforms for the private sector via the PRO Act, and in the public sector via the Public Service Freedom to Negotiate Act. He has said that he would like to go beyond these bills and pass even stronger legislation protecting the rights to organize. Just imagine finally having the weight of the White House behind Capitol Hill efforts to expand and strengthen worker rights rather than weaken them. Joe will appoint pro-NLRB and NMB members who believe in collective bargaining and want our labor laws to facilitate, not undermine, workers' efforts to form and join unions. He will appoint a pro-workers secretary of labor who will enforce wage and hour and health and safety laws, not help employers take advantage of every loophole to avoid compliance. He will appoint judges who aren't looking to crush unions and who understand the daily struggles of working people. As we try to rebuild from the disaster of the Trump administration and the coronavirus pandemic, Joe won't attempt to turn every crisis into an excuse for tax cuts for the rich, but an opportunity to save and create jobs with organizing rights. He opposes any tax breaks for companies that outsource jobs. On healthcare, he will continue President Obama's mission. President Obama, right there. I keep him in my office sometimes to remind me what a real president is like. He will continue President Obama's mission and strengthen and expand access to affordable healthcare with a public option that will give everyone the chance to buy into Medicare-like alternative to private health insurance. And he has a comprehensive plan to bring down the cost of prescription drugs. All of these policies are just not policies. They're signs of character. They show compassion and caring. They show a belief in our community and in giving people the power to improve their lives. There is one other aspect of Joe's character that will be so very important to the future of our country and of working people. Joe's belief in empowering people means all people, not just white people. Joe will not fan the flames of racial hatred. He will not seek to perpetuate white supremacy. He will not divide us against ourselves for his own gain. It is time for us to put everything into electing a president of the United States who will stand with all workers for a change and put our nation on the road to healing and recovery. That person is Joe Biden. And Glenn, we're going to turn Texas blue also in this election cycle. We're going to vote in Texas for Joe Biden. Thank all of you for giving me an opportunity to talk about why it's important that we elect Joe Biden president of the United States.
Thank you so much, Claude. Y'all heard it here too. We've got Georgia and we got Texas. It's a slam dunk. I want y'all to deliver those Senate seats also. We need all of them too. Powerful and on point, Claude. That's what we were looking for. We want to thank you for that. And I want to tell you that I point out that down ballot stuff because when Claude gets involved with the elections, he is one that looks at all aspects of the election. He's looking at down ballots as well as the top of the ticket. So we want to thank you for all the work that you do and thank all the rest of you for all the comments that you've made. Now we're heading toward the man of the hour. And before I get to him, I want to briefly speak about the man who's going to introduce the man of the hour. You can't just have Vice President Joe Biden show up to a Blacks for Labor event without having one of the strongest, one of the baddest, one of the loudest Black men in the labor movement introduce him. Lee Saunders, the president of my union, the great AFSCME, the Green Machine, has taken time from fighting this current government to make sure in November we have a new government. Lee gets that to make change at the bargaining table, sometimes you need to change the people you're bargaining against. Lee knows what Biden presidency will mean for his members, our members, and his community. He knows that when you argue against stupid, they hammer you down till you're as dull as they are. So he's done arguing with stupid and working to change the players as well as the game. He is here today to introduce Vice President Biden to all of us, to bring labor's voice to the table and to speak loudly and proudly as a Black man. President Lee Saunders.
Well, thank you, Terry. I think you can continue that introduction for the next 5 or 10 minutes, and I'll just sit back and listen to you, okay? Really, thanks for having me, and I'm glad to be here with the CBTU family. You know, these are critical times. family. These are very, very critical times. And we've got to do what we do best. And that is to organize and mobilize and educate our communities like never before. Many of you have heard me say this before, but I really mean it this time. This is the most important election in our lifetime. Make no mistake about it. And the power rests with us. It rests with us, with the trade union movement. It rests with our communities across the country. And we just got to get our supporters and our coalition partners out and our union members out and working families out in November. If we do that, we will win in November. You know, the last 6 months have been as painful and challenging as any I can remember for our country. We are grappling with a deadly pandemic that has killed more than 138,000 of our people. A pandemic that is disproportionately brutalizing the African-American community. The economy is in a state of chaos. Tens of millions of people are out of work and terrified about how they're going to pay their bills, how they're going to make their mortgages. They're going to be able to keep their jobs. We're also facing a reckoning in this country on issues of racial justice. You know, the murder of George Floyd and others is forcing us to confront systemic inequities that are as old as the nation itself. It couldn't be clear that the current president of the United States does not have the right stuff, and I'm being kind, to lead the nation through this period of crisis. And you know, that's the bad news. The good news is we can fire him 3.5 months from now. We can get him the hell out of office. This moment cries out for a seasoned and mature leader. Someone who has got that presidential temperament. Someone with a long history of uniting Americans around shared values. Someone who understands what the union difference means for our families, our workplaces, and our communities. Someone who has worked with and fought for the labor movement for decades, and I mean decades. Someone who understands at a gut level what working families talk about at their kitchen tables and the worries that keep them up at night. Someone who wants to improve on the Affordable Care Act, not destroy it. Building a healthcare system that lowers costs and expands access. Someone who wants to fix the rigged economy so that working people can get ahead and the wealthiest pay their fair share. Someone who understands that civil rights aren't just related to labor rights. Civil rights are labor rights. Someone who knows that racial justice isn't just intertwined with economic justice. Racial justice is economic justice. Someone who leads with honesty and integrity, with character and compassion. You know, I was actually on a Zoom call with the vice president this afternoon, talking about the issues that confront working families every single day. He gets it. He understands it. He's lived it. And he believes it. Talked about a variety of different issues this afternoon. And I've got to tell you that I am ready, and I know that you are ready for the change that's coming. Someone who thinks like us, who believes in the issues that we care about, who believes that workers should have a seat at the table, not sitting on the sidelines, but having a seat at the table. I was on his economic task force, along with a lot of other folks that were talking about and discussing the direction that this country should take. And the ideas that like the vice president has and how we can implement those kinds of ideas. And there was a lot of success coming out of those task forces. We have an agenda and a program, I believe, to move this country forward. He's inclusive. He brings everyone together. He understands that labor has built this country, and our members deserve a seat at the table, deserve a fair shake, deserve collective bargaining, so we can even that playing field. It's time. It's time for us to fight back and make our voices heard like never before. CBTU, if we do what we do best, if we educate and mobilize and organize for the next several months, then this friend of ours will be the 46th president of the United States. It is my pleasure. It is my pleasure to introduce to you my partner, my buddy, my friend, the next president of the United States, Joe Biden.
Hey, Lee, thanks an awful lot. One thing I can assure you, if in fact I get elected, you're going to have a seat at the table at the White House. That's no malarkey. I'm going to be the best friend Labor's ever had. And thank you for your support. And thank you, President Melvin, and to everyone in the Coalition of Black Trade Unionists for having me and for what you're doing for this country in this moment of crisis. You know, this pandemic rages on. It ravages people. It's especially in the Black community. The economy's still struggling on, but, you know, as the struggle's on, especially for Black workers, they're the ones getting hurt the most. And the reckoning over racial injustice toward Black Americans continues to challenge the very soul of this country. That's why I decided to run. You know, when I saw those folks coming out of the fields down in Charlottesville, carrying those torches and accompanied by the Ku Klux Klan, and when that young woman was killed and they asked her, Trump, what he thought, he said there were very fine people on both sides. My God, no president's ever said anything like that, no sitting president. But despite the turmoil, you're holding us together. The union movement is holding us together. You're keeping our hospitals safe, clean, and effective. You're delivering the mail, the medicines, the unemployment checks to people desperately in need. You're answering the 9/11 calls. You're driving the ambulance when people are in danger. And you're capturing the very essence of this coalition by marching and demanding that long overdue change take place. We're at one of those inflection points in history. I want to thank you for being in the forefront of it. You know, you show what I've known my entire career. Union members are the essential workers of the economy and the country. Wall Street didn't build this country. You built this country. You built the middle class. So I'm incredibly grateful, and I mean it sincerely, for your support. And I'm also relying on your partnership, because while the challenges are great, this moment requires bold, serious solutions that I think we can deliver together for Black workers, Black communities, the entire country. That's what I think this election is all about. It's not just calling out President Trump for his failures. For God's sake, they're so well known. We know them. You live with them, or lost a job, or lost a loved one during this pandemic because of those failures. This election is about real solutions to rebuild, to come back stronger, not just rebuild to what it was before, rebuild back better, safer, healthier, more competitive than ever. It's about truly delivering both racial and economic justice in America. We got a shot. It hadn't happened since Roosevelt, you know, for this kind of change of mind. Police reform that means outlawing chokeholds, prioritizing pattern and practice investigations, giving the Department of Justice, by the way, the DOJ is not the president's private law firm, giving the DOJ subpoena power, improving oversight and accountability, creating a model use of force standard nationally. You know, I've called on Congress and the president to take these steps right now. But I guarantee you, if I'm elected, I'll create a National Police Oversight Commission that ushers in real community policing, requires every police department in the country to review hiring, training, and de-escalation practices. But if we're serious about tackling systemic racism, we can't stop there. We have to close the wealth gap, expand affordable housing, invest in Black entrepreneurs, deliver educational opportunities for everybody, raise the minimum wage, fund state and local governments and the Postal Service so you can work within the safety and dignity you deserve. Look, we also need a dedicated agenda to pay our frontline workers more, keep them safe, secure during the pandemic, provide affordable health insurance to your families. Look how many people have lost their health insurance for the corporations they worked for. You know, for those who are working on the front lines, in the transit system, childcare, warehouses, if I were president today, I'd be directing the federal government to provide you with the regular testing, rapid results, and protective equipment that you need to keep you safe. And for all of you, I'm going to protect and expand Obamacare for you and for your families, not rip it up, not stay in court trying to get rid of it. In the middle of a pandemic, you're trying to do away with Obamacare? 100 million people covered because they had pre-existing conditions, they'd lose that? Over 22 million people who didn't have insurance before losing it? That's what the president's trying to do. We need a comprehensive agenda that also means implementing a bold plan to build back the economy, an economy of the future, not the past. Look, last week I announced my Build Back Better plan. It does just that. And the first pillar ensures that our future is made in America, with new pathways for Black tradesmen and women, high-paying jobs that make made-in-America products for the future, expanding unionization in the private sector, guaranteeing collective bargaining rights in the public sector, support pre-apprenticeship programs that provide pathways for women and people of color into good union-paying jobs, and recruit more young people of color into the labor movement. Look, yesterday I laid out the second pillar, a $2 trillion plan to modernize our infrastructure and deal with the existential threat of climate change by creating good paying union jobs that, one, restore our crumbling roads and bridges and ports, two, make it faster, cheaper, and cleaner to transport American-made goods, build and install 500,000 charging stations across the country, lay the lines for the second great railroad revolution, including electrifying more rail to deliver you more quality and public transportation. Do that all by 2030. Retrofit millions of homes and businesses so they aren't just spewing out energy and wasting billions of gallons of oil over time. And because of you, we have to we're going to slash pollution levels, reduce our energy costs, create millions of good-paying union jobs up and down the supply chain in construction, engineering, manufacturing. Look, you're going to be the center of the greatest spur to job creation that cements our economic competitiveness in the 21st century. You know, by a comprehensive agenda for racial equity, has to also include a slate of environmental justice policies that make sure the first people to benefit from our investment are those who've been hurt the most by the centuries of structural racial disparities. Under my plan, frontline and fence-line communities, and you know where they are, whether it's rural places or in center cities, are going to receive 40% of the benefits from the investments we're going to make. And we'll make that infrastructure and climate change in housing, in pollution reduction, workforce development, transportation, across the board. We're also going to create more than 250,000 jobs for people just by cleaning up environmental hazards that have now been abandoned and pose a daily threat to our health. Over 100,000 wells that are oil wells and gas wells that are just left open, spewing out stuff that's going to hurt the environment. You know, there's cancer clusters in Black communities, and the high rates of asthma in Black children. These aren't pie in the sky dreams. We can take these steps now, and the public's ready. We can accomplish another pillar of my Build Back Better plan. I'll be laying out next week a 21st century caregiving and education workforce that makes it easier for millions of workers, often women of color, to afford child care and care for aging relatives, elevates pays and benefits, and professional opportunities for caregivers and educators, while creating millions of good-paying new jobs with a choice to join a union. I know that's a lot. In this campaign, I've been laying out more actionable steps we can take. But we can't wait any longer. And while the work will be tough, I've never been more optimistic for one reason above all others. I know the history of the heart of this country. It's you. It's the labor movement. You lead. I know you can do this, and I know we can get it done. Folks, look, a lot's changed. The blinders have been taken off the vast majority of the American people. All those blue-collar workers who got fed the line of malarkey the last 25 years by the Chamber of Congress that organized labor is their problem, all of a sudden they're figuring out, I'm not a labor union member. Why do I have to sign a non-compete agreement if I make hamburgers and I want to go from one place to another? I can't go to get 10 cents more an hour? Why is it that I'm in a position that I viewed labor as the problem? Labor is my answer. You know, the Fair Labor Standards Act back in Roosevelt's time was designed to allow labor. But it went beyond that. It said we should promote labor unions. We badly need you. You're the only countervailing force to corporate greed. You're the only ones that have the power to take them on. And the country's ready for it. I'm ready for it. And I promise you, you'll never have a more union-friendly president than me if I get elected. I'm no longer going to make mistakes. When I make them, I'll acknowledge them. I need your help. I need it now. And we can really change things. I tell you, the country is ready. So thank you all for everything you do, for all that you give. And good night, and may God bless you all. And I'm going to now hand it back to President Melvin.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Amazing. And this is why we are with Joe in 2020. I just want to make one correction. I hate to correct the candidate, but it is not if, it is clearly when. We're going to make sure you get elected this November to be the 46th president of these United States of America. We want to thank you, Vice President Biden, for being here with us. Well, our time is now coming to an end. I want to thank my guests for bringing their personal perspectives on this election. I want to thank AFSCME President Lee Saunders for his fiery introduction and laying out the issues for us before bringing on Vice President Biden. I want to thank our soon-to-be 46th President, Joe Biden, for taking time to speak with Black labor on this afternoon. But most importantly, I want to thank all of you. CBTU does not exist without our members. We do not survive without your support. I want to thank you for taking the time to be here with us tonight. On Thursday, I want to remind you that tomorrow, July 16th, we'll be hosting a Heroes Act Town Hall. President Saunders will be joining us again, along with Randy Weingarten, President of the American Federation of Teachers, Mark Diemenstein, President of the American Postal Workers Union. We will be getting into the Heroes Act, its value and importance to workers, and what we can do to get it passed in this critical time. Well, that ends our 6th episode of Labor Shift. I thank you all for joining me tonight. If you can, please visit our website. It's www.cbtu.org, and donate to CBTU so we can carry out and continue to carry out and raise voice against injustice and for a progressive shift in power. Good night, and God bless you.